The chains around my wrists had worn grooves into my skin over the years. I stared at the stone floor of my cell, counting the cracks I'd memorized. 23 thin lines, 2 deep gouges, 1 stain that never came clean. The heavy door creaked open. I didn't look up. Looking up only brought more pain. This one. The voice that spoke wasn't like the others. It rumbled low, carrying an authority that made my wolf whimper deep inside. Release her. But Alpha King, she's marked as property of. A growl cut through the dungeon air. The sound vibrated through my bones, through the walls themselves. My head snapped up without my permission. Golden eyes met mine. They burned with barely contained power, with something that looked almost like rage. Not at me, at my chains. The man standing in my doorway was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that caught the torchlight, but it was his presence that stole my breath. Every instinct I had left screamed both danger and safety at once. I said, "Release her." Each word was carefully controlled, like he was holding back something far more dangerous than his voice. The guard's keys shook as he fumbled with my shackles. 22 years I'd worn these chains. 22 years since they'd stolen me from my pack as a child and marked me as property. The metal fell away from my wrists. I stared at my freed hands, not quite believing it. "Can you walk?" The Alpha King's voice had gentled, though that underlying power remained. I tried to stand. My legs, weak from years of confinement, buckled. Before I could hit the ground, strong arms caught me. His touch was careful, respectful, nothing like the handlers who'd owned me. "Easy." His breath was warm against my ear. "I've got you." Those 3 words did something strange to my chest, made it tight and loose at the same time. I'd never heard them before, not in all my years of captivity. He lifted me like I weighed nothing. My wolf, silent for so long, stirred with interest. She recognized something in him, something that called to the parts of me I'd thought were dead. "What's your name?" he asked as he carried me through corridors I'd never seen. They called me 17. The number felt wrong on my tongue now, like a coat that no longer fit. His jaw tightened. "Your real name." I had to think. It had been so long since anyone had asked. "Luna." The word came out as barely a whisper. "My name is Luna." "Luna." He repeated it like he was testing how it sounded, like it mattered. "I'm Marcus, not Alpha King, not your majesty, just Marcus." He carried me up stone steps, through halls lined with windows, real windows, with actual sunlight streaming through. I hadn't seen the sun in years. It made my eyes water, but I couldn't look away. "Where are you taking me?" I managed to ask. "Somewhere safe." His arms tightened around me protectively. "Somewhere they can never touch you again." The rooms he brought me to were larger than the entire slave quarters I'd known. There was a bed with actual blankets, a window that faced a garden, and a door with no lock. Marcus set me down gently on the edge of the bed. I immediately tested the mattress, surprised by its softness. "When did you last eat?" he asked. I couldn't remember. Time moved differently in the cells. "Yesterday, maybe." His expression darkened, but not at me. Never at me, I was starting to realize. He moved to a table by the window and returned with bread, cheese, and water. "Small bites," he said, sitting carefully on the far end of the bed, giving me space. "Your stomach will need time to adjust." I ate slowly, watching him watch me. His eyes never left my face, like he was memorizing it, like I was something precious instead of property. "Why did you free me?" The question had been building since he'd appeared in my cell. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than before. "Because no one deserves to live in chains. But I'm nothing. A slave, property. You're a person." The words came out sharp, angry. "You have a name, thoughts, feelings. You matter." I'd never heard anyone say that before. The bread turned to paste in my mouth. "I don't understand." Tears started without warning. "Why would you care about someone like me?" Marcus shifted closer, slowly, like he was approaching a wounded animal. Because the moment I saw you, something in me recognized something in you. My wolf perked up at that. She'd been trying to tell me the same thing. I know this is overwhelming, he continued. I know you have no reason to trust me. But I give you my word, Luna. You're safe here. What if I want to leave? I tested. Then you leave. He said it without hesitation. The choice is yours. It will always be yours. Choice, another word I'd almost forgotten. He stood then, moving toward the door. Rest, eat. There are clothes in the wardrobe that should fit. Tomorrow, if you're feeling stronger, I'll show you the gardens. Marcus. His name felt strange on my tongue. Good strange. He turned back. Thank you. The words were inadequate, but they were all I had. Something soft crossed his features. You don't need to thank me for treating you like a person, Luna. But I did, because in my world, kindness was so rare it felt like magic. After he left, I sat in the growing darkness, staring out at stars I hadn't seen in years. My wrists felt naked without their chains. My wolf paced restlessly, drawn to the alpha who'd set us free. I touched the soft blankets, the smooth window glass, the unlocked door. All of it felt like a dream I might wake up from. But the ache in my chest, the way my heart had stuttered when Marcus said my name, that felt dangerously real. For the first time in 22 years, I fell asleep without chains. And for the first time ever, I dreamed of golden eyes that looked at me like I mattered. Morning light woke me gently. No harsh voices, no clanging bars, just sunshine streaming through my window, warming my face. I'd slept through the night. Actually slept. Instead of dozing fitfully between rounds of the guards, my body felt strange without the constant low-level fear. A soft knock came at my door, not the pounding I was used to, but a polite request for permission. Come in, I called, pulling the blankets up to my chin. Marcus entered carrying a tray. The smell of hot food made my stomach clench with hunger. Real food, not the scraps I was used to. How did you sleep? He set the tray on the small table by the window. I don't remember the last time I slept so deeply. I pushed myself up, suddenly aware of how I must look. Tangled hair, the same dirty clothes from yesterday. There's a bathroom through that door, he said, like he could read my thoughts. Hot water, soap, whatever you need. Hot water. I nearly cried at the luxury of it. I brought you breakfast, but take your time. There's no schedule here, no one demanding your time. He moved toward the door again, always giving me space to breathe. But something in me didn't want him to go. Marcus. He stopped, looking back. Would you stay while I eat, if you're not too busy? The smile that crossed his face was warm enough to heat the whole room. I'd like that. He settled into the chair across from me while I managed small bites of eggs and fresh bread. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable. It was the first peaceful quiet I'd known. Tell me about the gardens. I said eventually. They're my mother's legacy. She planted them when I was young. His voice carried fondness and grief in equal measure. Roses, jasmine, herbs for healing. She said gardens were proof that beautiful things could grow even in difficult soil. She sounds wise. She was. I think she would have liked you. The comment surprised me. You don't know anything about me. I know you survived 22 years of hell and still have kindness in your eyes. He leaned forward slightly. I know you thanked me for basic decency. I know you're stronger than you realize. I don't feel strong. I feel broken. Broken things can heal, with time, with care. His voice was gentle but certain. My mother taught me that too. After breakfast, Marcus showed me to the bathroom. The hot water was everything I'd imagined and more. I scrubbed away years of grime and despair. Watching the brown water swirl down the drain, the clothes in the wardrobe fit perfectly. Soft fabrics in blues and greens, nothing like the rough sackcloth I was used to. I caught my reflection in the mirror and barely recognized myself. Clean, fed, dressed like a person instead of property. I looked almost normal. Marcus was waiting in the hallway when I emerged. His eyes went wide when he saw me. Luna. My name came out like a prayer. You look different? Beautiful. The word hung between us, making my cheeks warm. You always were. But now you look free. No one had ever called me beautiful before. The gardens were everything he promised. Flowers in every color, stone paths winding between beds of herbs, benches placed to catch the morning sun. I could have wandered for hours. This one's for healing, Marcus said, stopping beside a patch of silver-green leaves. And this helps with sleep. You know about herbs? My mother made sure I learned. She said an alpha should know how to heal as well as protect. He plucked a small purple flower and handed it to me. Our fingers brushed as I took it, sending a strange warmth up my arm. What's this one for? I asked. Hope. He said it quietly, like it was a secret. She planted them the year after my father died. Said some years you have to grow your own hope. I understood that more than he knew. We walked the whole garden, Marcus naming plants and sharing memories. His voice carried such love for his mother, such reverence for the life she'd built here. She would have loved having someone to share these with, he said, as we settled on a bench overlooking the rose garden. You must have visitors, friends, family, politicians and pack leaders mostly, people who want something from the Alpha King. His expression grew distant. It's been a long time since I had someone to simply sit with. I'm not much company. I don't know how to make conversation or entertain people. Luna. He turned to face me fully. You don't need to entertain anyone. Your presence is enough. The sincerity in his voice made my chest tight. I don't understand why you're being so kind to me. Because you deserve kindness. Because you're here and you're safe, and that matters. A cloud passed over the sun, and I shivered. Marcus immediately started to remove his jacket. I'm fine, I protested. You're cold. He settled the jacket around my shoulders anyway. It smelled like him. Clean and warm and safe. Better? I nodded, pulling the fabric closer. It was too big, but that made it feel like being wrapped in his protection. Marcus. I've been wondering about this all morning. Yesterday, in the dungeons, why were you there? His jaw tightened. I'd heard rumors about the slave trade operating in my territory. I came to shut it down personally. And you found me? I found you. He looked at his hands. The moment I saw you, everything changed. Changed how? He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. My wolf knew you before my mind did. He's been restless for months, searching for something. When I saw you, he met my eyes. He went completely still, like he'd found what he was looking for. My own wolf stirred at his words. She'd been trying to tell me the same thing. I don't understand what that means, I whispered. Neither do I, not completely. Marcus shifted closer on the bench. But I know I couldn't leave you there. I know that seeing you free, seeing you smile, it feels more important than anything else in my world. The intensity in his voice made my heart race. Part of me wanted to run, to hide from feelings this powerful. But a larger part wanted to stay right here, wrapped in his jacket and his attention. I'm scared, I admitted. Of me? Of this. Of feeling safe when I know it can be taken away. I looked at the flowers, at the beauty that felt too good to be real. Of hoping. Marcus reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away. When I didn't, he covered my hand with his. I can't promise that bad things will never happen again, but I can promise that I will never let anyone put you in chains. I can promise that you will always have a choice. His hand was warm, steady, completely different from any touch I'd known. My wolf practically purred at the contact. What if I choose to stay? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Then you stay. His thumb traced gently over my knuckles. For as long as you want. What if I choose to leave? Then I'll miss you every day for the rest of my life, but I'll let you go. The honesty in his answer broke something open in my chest. He meant it. Every word. I've never had choices before. I said softly, Then we'll start small. What would you like to do this afternoon? Such a simple question, but it felt monumental. What did I want to do? Could we stay here, in the garden? We can stay here as long as you want. So we did. We sat in comfortable silence, his hand covering mine, surrounded by his mother's flowers. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged somewhere. The peace lasted 3 days, 3 perfect days where I began to believe that maybe, just maybe, this happiness could be real. I learned to walk the halls without flinching at shadows. I discovered the library, with its countless books and comfortable chairs. I started sleeping through the night without nightmares. But on the 4th day, the whispers started. I was in the kitchen, helping prepare the evening meal, because I couldn't stand being idle, when I overheard 2 servants talking in low voices. Not natural, is it? A king taking up with a slave girl. She seems nice enough, but you have to wonder what she's really after. Mark my words, this won't last. He'll get bored of playing savior. Their words hit me like physical blows. I set down the vegetables I'd been chopping and slipped out the back door, needing air, needing space to think. Was that what people thought? That I was using Marcus? That this was all some elaborate game? I found myself back in the garden, sitting on our bench, staring at nothing. The purple hope flowers Marcus had shown me swayed in the breeze, and I wondered if hope was just another kind of delusion. There you are. Marcus's voice came from behind me. The kitchen staff said you seemed upset. I didn't turn around, just tired. Luna? He sat beside me close enough that I could feel his warmth. What's wrong? Nothing. Everything's fine. You're lying. There was no anger in his voice, just gentle certainty. I can feel it through our connection. Something's hurt you. Our connection. I've been trying not to think about that strange pull between us, the way his emotions seemed to echo in my chest. People are talking, I said finally. What kind of talking? About us, about what I might be after, about how this won't last. I finally looked at him. They think I'm using you. Marcus's expression darkened. Who said that? It doesn't matter. They're probably right. No, they're not. His voice carried that alpha authority that made my wolf sit up and listen. And it does matter. I won't have anyone making you feel unwelcome in your own home. But what if they're right? What if I am just some broken thing you felt sorry for? Stop. The word was gentle but firm. Look at me, Luna. Reluctantly, I met his eyes. You are not broken. You are not something I felt sorry for. You are... He paused, seeming to struggle with words. You are the most important person in my world. Why? The question came out small, vulnerable. I'm nobody special. You're wrong about that. His hand found mine, fingers intertwining. Do you want to know what I see when I look at you? I nodded, not trusting my voice. I see someone who survived 22 years of hell and came out of it with compassion still intact. I see someone who worries about being a burden while helping in my kitchens because she can't stand to be idle. I see someone who asks permission to exist instead of demanding what she deserves. His thumb traced over my knuckles. I see someone who makes me want to be better than I am. Marcus. I'm not done. His eyes were intense, golden flecks catching the afternoon light. I see someone who's been told she's worthless so many times she believes it, but who has more inner strength than anyone I've ever met. I see someone who's afraid to hope because hope has been used as a weapon against her. Tears were starting, and I couldn't stop them. Most of all, he said softly, I see my mate. The word hit me like lightning. Your what? My mate. He said it with quiet certainty. That's what my wolf recognized in you from the first moment. That's why I couldn't leave you there. That's why being near you feels like coming home. I stared at him, trying to process what he'd just said. Mates were rare, sacred things, the other half of someone's soul. That's impossible, I whispered. Why? Because I'm nothing. Because alphas don't mate with slaves. You're not nothing. His free hand cupped my face gently. And you're not a slave. You're Luna, and you're mine, and I'm yours, if you'll have me. My wolf was practically singing with joy, recognition flooding through me. This was why I felt so drawn to him. Why his touch felt like safety. Why his presence calmed the storms in my mind. But the human part of me was terrified. I don't know how to be anyone's mate. We'll figure it out together. What about the political problems, the whispers? Let them whisper. Let them question. In the end, the only opinions that matter are ours. I wanted to believe him. Every cell in my body wanted to believe him. But 22 years of conditioning didn't disappear in 3 days. I need time to think, I said. Pain flashed across his features, but he nodded. Take all the time you need. Nothing changes about your place here, Luna. Whether you accept the mate bond or not, you're safe. You're home. That evening, I sat by my window long into the night, watching the stars and trying to make sense of everything. My wolf paced restlessly, wanting to claim what was ours, but my human mind kept throwing up barriers. What if this was all some elaborate kindness that would end when he got tired of me? What if I wasn't strong enough to be the mate of an Alsla king? What if I ruined everything for him? But underneath all the fear was a simple truth. I loved him. Loved his patience, his gentleness, the way he saw worth in me when I couldn't see it in myself. Loved how safe I felt in his presence, how he made me want to be brave. The question wasn't whether I loved him. The question was whether I was brave enough to trust that love. I was still wrestling with that question when soft footsteps in the hallway caught my attention. For a moment, old fears flared, someone coming for me in the night. But then I caught his scent, warm and familiar. "Marcus," I called softly. "I'm sorry," he said through the door. "I couldn't sleep. I was just walking past. Come in." He entered hesitantly, like he was afraid I might send him away. He was wearing simple sleep clothes, his dark hair mussed, looking younger and more vulnerable than I'd ever seen him. "I keep thinking about what you said," I told him. "About being mates. Luna, there's no pressure. My wolf knew too." The words came out in a rush. From the first moment I saw you, she's been trying to tell me. I was too scared to listen. He moved closer, hope evident in every line of his body. "And now? Now I'm still scared, but I'm tired of being afraid." I stood, moving to face him. "I'm tired of letting fear make my choices for me." "What are you saying?" I took a deep breath, gathering every scrap of courage I possessed. "I'm saying yes, to the mate bond, to whatever this is between us, to you." The smile that spread across his face was brighter than sunlight. "Luna." "Yes." He reached for me then, hands framing my face like I was something precious. "Are you sure? Once we do this, once we complete the bond, there's no going back." "I don't want to go back. I want to go forward. With you." He leaned down slowly, giving me time to change my mind. When his lips met mine, it was like coming home and setting out on an adventure all at once. The kiss was gentle at first, reverent, but as my arms wound around his neck, as I pressed closer to his warmth, it deepened into something that made my whole body sing. When we broke apart, we were both breathless. "I love you," he said against my forehead. "I love you too." Those were the first words of love I'd ever spoken. They felt like the most important words of my life. The weeks that followed were a revelation. Learning to be half of a mated pair, learning to trust in love, learning who I was when I wasn't afraid. It was the hardest and most wonderful thing I'd ever done. Marcus was endlessly patient with my fears, my sudden panics, my need to sometimes be alone, to process the magnitude of what we'd found together. He never pushed, never demanded more than I was ready to give. But he also never let me retreat entirely. When the nightmares came, he held me until they passed. When I doubted my worth, He showed me with gentle touches and fierce words that I was treasured. When I tried to hide in the servants' quarters, feeling like I didn't belong in his world, he found me and brought me home. "You're thinking too hard again," he said one afternoon as we walked through the gardens. "How can you tell? You get this little crease right here." He touched the spot between my eyebrows. "What's bothering you?" "The pack meeting is next week." "It is. They'll all want to meet me, your mate." "They will." I stopped walking, turning to face him fully. "Marcus, what if they don't accept me? What if they think you've lost your mind mating with a former slave? Then they'll be wrong. But what if—" He silenced me with a kiss, soft and reassuring. When we parted, his eyes were warm with understanding. "Luna, I know you're scared, but you need to understand something. I didn't choose you despite who you are. I chose you because of who you are." A broken, traumatized mess? A survivor. A woman who shows compassion to servants because she remembers what it feels like to be invisible. Someone who refuses to be idle because she knows the value of work, of purpose. His hands framed my face. Someone who makes me want to be the kind of king worthy of her love. Tears pricked my eyes. "You already are that king, because of you, because you make me see things differently. What if the pack leaders don't see it that way? Then they're not as smart as I thought they were." His voice carried quiet steel. "Luna, you are my mate, my queen. If they can't accept that, they can challenge me for the right to lead." The absolute certainty in his voice should have been comforting. Instead, it terrified me. "I don't want to be the reason you have to fight your own people. You won't be. My strength of leadership will be the reason if it comes to that. But I don't think it will." He pulled me close, and I breathed in his reassuring scent. "Trust me?" "Always." The pack meeting was held in the Great Hall, with representatives from every major family in our territory. I'd spent hours getting ready, choosing a dress that was elegant but not ostentatious, practicing what I would say. But all the preparation in the world couldn't calm my nerves as I walked into that room full of powerful wolves. All of them studying me with varying degrees of curiosity and skepticism. Marcus introduced me with quiet pride, his hand warm and steady at the small of my back. But I could feel the weight of their judgment, the questions they were too polite to ask directly. The formal part of the meeting went smoothly enough. Pack business, territory disputes, trade agreements. I sat beside Marcus and tried to look like I belonged there. It was during the informal reception afterward that things got complicated. "So you're the famous Luna," said a sharp-featured woman I'd been introduced to as Alpha Sarah from the Eastern Territories. "Marcus has told us so little about your background." There was a subtle emphasis on the word background that made my skin prickle. "There's not much to tell," I replied carefully. "Oh, I'm sure that's not true. Where did you grow up? Who were your parents?" The questions felt like traps. Behind Sarah, other pack leaders were listening with obvious interest. I don't remember much about my early childhood." It wasn't entirely a lie. "How convenient," another voice said. I turned to see a gray-haired man with cold eyes. Isn't it unusual for someone to just appear and capture a king's heart so quickly? "Robert." Marcus's voice carried warning as he appeared at my side. "I'm simply curious about our new queen's origins," Robert replied smoothly. "Surely that's reasonable?" "What's reasonable is accepting my choice in mates without interrogation," Marcus said. His tone dangerous. The tension in the room ratcheted up several degrees. Other conversations stopped as people turned to watch what was clearly becoming a confrontation. "Of course, Your Majesty," Robert said with false deference. "But you must understand, there are concerns about security, about someone of unknown background having access to sensitive pack information." Are you questioning my judgment? Marcus asked softly. Even I could feel the alpha power radiating from him now. Several of the weaker wolves in the room automatically stepped back. Never, Robert said, but his eyes were hard. I'm simply looking out for the good of the pack. Then you'll treat my mate with the respect she deserves. Of course, though I do wonder what qualifications she brings to the role of queen. That was it. The polite facade was gone. The real challenge laid bare. I could feel Marcus tensing beside me, his wolf rising to defend me. But I didn't need defending, not from this. You want to know my qualifications? I asked, stepping forward slightly. I'll tell you. The room went dead quiet. I know what it means to have nothing and still find reasons to keep living. I know what it's like to be powerless and still maintain hope. I looked directly at Robert as I spoke. I know how to survive impossible odds and come out the other side with my humanity intact. That's very inspiring, Sarah said with barely concealed condescension. But what does that have to do with ruling? Everything. My voice grew stronger as I found my footing. A good ruler needs to understand what it means to struggle. They need to know what their people face when times are hard. I turned to address the room as a whole. You look at me and see someone unworthy of your king, someone who doesn't understand your world of politics and power games. Because you don't, Robert said bluntly. You're right, I don't understand those games, but I understand something more important. I lifted my chin, meeting each skeptical gaze. I understand what it means to protect people who can't protect themselves. I understand that true strength isn't about domination. It's about service. Sarah said, but what have you actually accomplished? I survived. The words came out quiet but fierce. For 22 years, I survived hell itself. And when Marcus gave me a chance at freedom, I didn't waste it. I learned to read, to think, to hope again. I chose love over fear. I moved closer to Marcus, drawing strength from his presence. You want to know what qualifies me to stand beside your king? I've seen the worst of what wolves can do to each other, and I still believe in our capacity for good. I've been broken down to nothing, and I built myself back up. I know the value of mercy because I've needed it. I know the importance of justice because I've lived without it. The room was absolutely silent now. I may not have been born to nobility, I continued, but I was born to stand beside this man, to help him lead with both strength and compassion. If you can't accept that, then the problem isn't with me. It's with your understanding of what leadership really means. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then slowly, the elderly Alpha Helena from the southern mountains began to clap. Others joined her until the applause filled the room. Well said, Helena called out. I think you'll do just fine, dear. Even Sarah looked grudgingly impressed. Only Robert maintained his hostility, but he was clearly outnumbered now. Later, after the pack leaders had gone and we were alone in our chambers, Marcus pulled me into his arms. That was incredible, he said, voice full of pride. The way you stood up to them, the way you made them see you as you really are. I was terrified the whole time. But you did it anyway. That's what courage looks like, Luna. I leaned into his warmth, still processing what had happened. Do you think it worked? Do you think they accept me now? Most of them, yes. The ones who matter, certainly. His arms tightened around me, but even if they didn't, it wouldn't change anything. You're my mate, my queen, my choice, always. I love you, I said against his chest. I love you too, more than I thought possible. We stood there in comfortable silence for a while, holding each other as the evening light faded outside our windows. Marcus, I said eventually. I'm ready. Ready for what? I pulled back to look at him, seeing my own desire reflected in his eyes. To complete the mating bond, to be yours completely. His breath caught. Luna, are you sure? We don't have to rush. Unsure. I reached up to cup his face. I want to belong to you. I want you to belong to me. Forever. The word came out as barely a whisper, but it carried all the weight of a vow. Forever, he agreed, and kissed me like he meant it. 3 months later, I stood in the moonlight wearing a simple white dress, surrounded by our pack, as we prepared for the final mating ceremony. The formal wedding had been beautiful, But this was what really mattered. The ancient ritual that would bind us together completely. "Are you ready?" Marcus asked, his hands gentle on my face. I could see the golden glow of his eyes in the darkness, could feel the power humming between us. My own wolf was practically singing with anticipation. "I'm ready." The pack formed a circle around us as Marcus and I faced each other. This was the moment I'd been both yearning for and fearing, the point of no return. "Luna Blackwood," Marcus said formally, his voice carrying to every corner of the clearing. "Do you accept me as your mate, your partner, your equal in all things?" "I do." The words came out strong and clear. "Do you promise to stand beside me through all challenges, to share in both joy and sorrow, to help me lead our people with wisdom and compassion?" "I do." "Then I claim you as mine, as I give myself to you." He leaned down and pressed his lips to the spot where my neck met my shoulder. When his canines extended and pierced my skin, the sensation was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Pain and pleasure and completion all rolled into one overwhelming moment. When it was my turn, I marked him with the same reverence, the same love. His blood was warm and rich on my tongue, tasting like home and forever. The pack howled their approval as we stepped apart, the new mating marks already beginning to heal. But the bond between us was stronger than ever, humming with contentment and love. "My queen," Marcus said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "My king," I replied. When he kissed me, deep and thorough and full of promise, the pack erupted in celebration around us. But all I could focus on was the man in my arms, the mate who'd saved me in every way that mattered. Later, much later, we stood on the balcony outside our chambers, looking out over the territory that was now ours to protect together. "Any regrets?" Marcus asked, arms wrapped around me from behind. "Only that it took me so long to say yes." His laughter rumbled against my back. "We had to do it right, had to give you time to choose freely. And I chose you. Best decision you ever made." I turned to his arms, looking up at the man who'd shown me what love looked like. "No, best decision we ever made." Above us, the moon smiled down on the Alpha King and his queen, on the love that had grown from the ashes of despair, on the future that stretched bright and endless before us. But even in our happiness, I should have known that the past never stays buried forever. The first sign of trouble came exactly 6 months after our mating ceremony, on what should have been a perfectly ordinary Tuesday morning. I was in the greenhouse Marcus had built for me, tending to the herbs I'd learned to cultivate, when his distress hit me like a physical blow through our bond. The watering can fell from my hands as I gasped, feeling his anger and fear as if they were my own. Without hesitation, I ran toward the source of his emotions, my bare feet slapping against the stone floors. I found him in his study, standing rigid behind his desk like he was carved from stone. In his hands was a letter, the parchment crumpled from his grip. But it was his face that made my blood turn to ice. Pale, with barely controlled rage, golden eyes blazing with protective fury. "Marcus?" I approached carefully, recognizing the dangerous stillness that meant his wolf was close to the surface. "What's happened?" He looked up at me, and the pain I saw there made my chest tight. "The Northern Territories are challenging our bond." The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. "What do you mean challenging?" "They're claiming you're still legally property." His voice was deadly quiet, each word precisely controlled. "That our mating isn't valid because slaves can't give legal consent. They want you returned." The world tilted sideways. I gripped the edge of his desk to keep from falling. "Returned to who?" "Victor Bloodmane." The name came out like a curse. "Apparently your former owner is still alive, and he wants his property back." Victor. The name alone was enough to send me spiraling back into nightmares I thought I'd left behind. The alpha who bought me as a child, who'd kept me chained in darkness for 22 years, the monster whose cruelty had shaped every fearful instinct I possessed. "He can't." The words came out as barely a whisper. "He can't do that. He's trying. Marcus came around the desk and pulled me into his arms, but I could feel the tremor in his hands. The Northern Pack leaders are backing him, claiming it's about property rights and legal precedent. Even as he held me, I could feel his wolf's protective fury through our bond. But underneath that rage was something that terrified me more. Genuine worry that he might not be able to stop this. What does this mean legally? I managed to ask. Marcus was quiet for too long. When he spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. It means we have to go before the High Council. They'll hear both sides and make a ruling. And if they rule in his favor, they won't. But he said it too quickly. Without his usual confidence. Marcus. I pulled back to look at him. If they do, his arms tightened around me fiercely. Then we'll face that together. But I won't let you go back to that life, Luna. I'd rather burn the whole kingdom down first. The fierce protectiveness in his voice should have been comforting. Instead, it made my worst fears crystallize into terrible clarity. This put him in an impossible position. Choose between his mate and his duty to his people. When is the hearing? I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. 3 weeks. 3 weeks to prepare for the fight of our lives. 3 weeks before I might have to face the man who still haunted my nightmares. 3 weeks to prove that I was more than property, that our love was real and legal and worth protecting. I want to see the letter, I said. Marcus hesitated. Luna, it's not pleasant reading. I need to know what we're fighting against. Reluctantly, he smoothed out the crumpled parchment and handed it to me. The moment I saw the handwriting, bile rose in my throat. Victor's harsh scrawl was exactly as I remembered, and reading his words made my skin crawl. He detailed his supposed legal ownership of me with clinical precision. The money he paid, the years of his investment in keeping me alive. He described me in terms that made my stomach churn, as damaged goods that had been stolen from him, property that needed to be returned to its rightful owner. But worst of all, he knew things about my new life, about our mating ceremony, about my role as queen, about how far I'd come from the broken girl he'd owned. And he was using all of it against us, claiming that I was too damaged to give real consent, too conditioned to slavery to make free choices. He's been watching us, I said, my voice barely steady. It appears so. Marcus, what if the council agrees with him? What if they decide I really am still his property? Then we'll prove them wrong. But I could see the fear in his eyes, the recognition that this was bigger than just us. If the council ruled that former slaves couldn't legally consent to mating, it would set a precedent that could destroy countless relationships across the territories. My hands were shaking as I set the letter down. I need air. I moved toward the window, but the room felt too small, too closed in. All at once, I was that terrified girl again, waiting to be dragged back to her cage. Luna. Marcus's voice was gentle but firm. Look at me. I turned, trying to focus on his steady presence instead of the panic clawing at my chest. We will fight this, he said with quiet certainty, and we will win. Do you trust me? With my life. Then trust me now. Victor Bloodmane will never touch you again. I wanted to believe him with everything I had. But 22 years of conditioning didn't disappear overnight, and the old fears were rising like floodwater, threatening to drown the confidence I'd built. What if the council decided I was still property? What if they forced me to go back? What if our love, strong as it was, wasn't enough to protect me from the law? The next 3 weeks blurred together in a haze of preparation and barely controlled terror. Marcus worked tirelessly with his legal team, building our case while I tried not to fall apart under the weight of returning nightmares. Sleep became my enemy again. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Victor's cruel face, felt phantom chains around my wrists. I'd wake up screaming, sure I was back in that cold stone cell. and only Marcus's arms could convince me I was still free. "The dreams are getting worse," he said one morning after a particularly bad night. "I'm fine." "No, you're not." He pulled me closer, and I could feel his worry through our bond. "Luna, we need to talk about what's happening to you." "What's happening is that my worst nightmare is trying to come true." I sat up, running shaking hands through my hair. "I can't stop thinking about what it would mean to go back to him." "You're not going back." "But what if—" "No." Marcus's voice carried absolute authority. "There is no what if. You are my mate, my queen, my everything. I will not let them take you. Even if it means war with the Northern Territories, especially then." I stared at him, seeing the steel resolve in his eyes. He meant it completely. He would fight anyone, sacrifice anything to keep me safe. "Marcus, I can't be the reason you go to war with your own people." "You won't be. Their greed and backwards laws will be." "But—" He silenced me with a kiss, fierce and desperate. When we broke apart, his forehead rested against mine. "Luna, listen to me. I've spent my whole life making decisions for the good of the pack, putting duty before personal desires. But you know what I've learned since I found you?" I shook my head. "Sometimes the right thing and the dutiful thing aren't the same. Sometimes you have to choose between what's expected and what's right." His hands cupped my face. "And you, my love, are worth choosing right." Tears started without my permission. "What if I'm not strong enough for this fight?" "You're the strongest person I know." "I don't feel strong. I feel like that scared girl in chains again." "Then I'll be strong enough for both of us until you remember who you really are." "Who am I really?" "You're Luna Blackwood, Queen of the Southern Territories. You're the woman who survived 22 years of hell and came out with her soul intact. You're my mate, my equal, my heart walking around outside my body." Each word was spoken with quiet reverence. "You're the woman who's going to help me change this world so no one else ever has to suffer what you suffered." Those words did something to the frozen terror in my chest, melted it just enough for me to breathe again. "I love you," I whispered. "I love you too, and that love is going to see us through this." The hearing was held in the ancient council chambers, a massive stone hall that had witnessed centuries of legal battles. The space was packed with representatives from every major pack, all here to witness what the media was calling the trial of the century. I sat beside Marcus at the defendant's table, wearing the formal midnight blue gown he had made for me and the silver crown that marked me as his queen. But inside, I felt like that terrified child again, waiting to learn my fate. When Victor entered with his legal team, the sight of him after all these months made my vision gray at the edges. He was exactly as I remembered, tall, imposing, with pale eyes that seemed to strip away every defense I built, cold and calculating and utterly without mercy. Minot's eyes found mine across the courtroom. He smiled. It was the same predatory expression I remembered from my captivity, promising pain and dominance and the kind of cruelty that broke spirits. My wolf whimpered and tried to hide. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to submit, to make myself as small as possible. But Marcus's hand found mine under the table, steady and warm, and through our bond came his absolute certainty that I was safe. The chief counselor, an ancient wolf named Aldrich, called the session to order. His voice echoed in the vast chamber as he spoke the formal words that would determine my fate. "We are here to determine the legal status of Luna Blackwood, currently mated to Alpha King Marcus Blackwood, previously designated as Subject 17, property of Victor Bloodmane of the Northern Territories." Hearing myself described as property again in such a formal setting made bile rise in my throat. But I kept my expression neutral, the way Marcus had taught me. Victor's lawyer spoke first, and his presentation was masterfully cruel. He laid out their case with clinical precision. I was stolen property, they claimed. Victor had legal documentation proving his ownership. Bills of sale, records of purchase, certificates of property transfer. According to their argument, our mating was invalid because slaves couldn't legally give consent, making me technically an adulteress and Marcus a thief. The lawyer presented evidence of Victor's investment in me over the years: food, shelter, medical care when I was injured. In his telling, Victor was a responsible owner who'd had valuable property stolen by an infatuated king. It was methodical, thorough, and absolutely devastating to hear. Several council members were taking notes, nodding along with points about legal precedent and property law. When it was our turn, Marcus's legal team fought back with arguments about human rights, the illegality of slavery, and the sovereignty of the Alpha King. They pointed out that slavery had been officially outlawed decades ago, that I was a person with inherent rights, not property to be owned. But I could see some of the council members weren't entirely convinced. The law, as it currently stood, was murky on cases like mine. "The defendant will now speak for herself," Aldrich announced. This was it, the moment everything hinged on. I stood on legs that felt like water, acutely aware that the eyes of every powerful wolf in the territories were fixed on me. "Counselors," I began, surprised that my voice came out steady and clear. "I stand before you today as Luna Blackwood, Queen of the Southern Territories, mate to Alpha King Marcus. But I wasn't always these things." I paused, drawing strength from Marcus's presence behind me. For 22 years, I was called property. I was bought and sold, chained and beaten, treated as less than human by people who convinced themselves that pieces of paper made their cruelty legal. Victor's eyes narrowed, but I pressed on, my voice growing stronger. Victor Bloodmane owned my body, controlled my movements, decided when I ate and when I slept. But there was one thing he never owned. No matter how many chains he used or how many years passed, I turned to look directly at him, meeting that cold gaze without flinching for the first time in my life. He never owned my mind. He never owned my heart. He never owned my soul. Each word came out clear and strong. Those things were always mine to give, and I gave them to Marcus freely. I faced the council again. The opposing counsel argues that I couldn't give legal consent because I was a slave. But I argue that I was never truly a slave. I was a free person held in illegal bondage. My ability to choose, to love, to consent was never dependent on Victor Bloodmane's permission. Murmurs rippled through the gallery, but I wasn't finished. "You want to know about property law? Then consider this. I was 7 years old when Victor bought me. 7. The laws of every territory clearly state that children cannot be sold into bondage, which means the original transaction was illegal, which means Victor never legally owned me at all. The courtroom erupted. Victor shot to his feet, his lawyer frantically shuffling papers, and several council members leaned forward with new interest. Furthermore, I continued over the noise. Every day Victor held me after my 18th birthday was false imprisonment. Every chain, every locked door, every refusal to let me leave was a crime against my person. "Objection," Victor's lawyer called out. "The statute of limitations." "There is no statute of limitations on slavery," I said firmly. "It's a crime against humanity itself." I turned back to Victor, and for the first time since I was a child, I felt no fear when I looked at him. "You want to reclaim your property? Then admit what you really are. Admit that you built your wealth on the backs of stolen children. Admit that you're a criminal who's trying to use this council to legitimize decades of torture." "That's enough!" Victor exploded, his careful composure finally cracking. "You ungrateful little bitch! I fed you, sheltered you, kept you alive when no one else wanted you." "You kept me alive so you could use me," I shot back. "That's not kindness, that's livestock management." The gallery gasped at my bluntness, but I wasn't done. "And here's what really terrifies you, Victor. It's not that you lost property. It's that everyone in this room can now see what you really are. A man so weak, so pathetic, that the only way you could feel powerful was by torturing a child. Control yourself, Mr. Bloodmane, Chief Counselor Aldrich warned, but Victor was beyond listening. She belongs to me, he snarled, his wolf showing in his eyes. I own her. You own nothing, I said with quiet dignity, and you never did. The silence that followed was deafening. Victor stood there, chest heaving, having revealed his true nature to a room full of the most powerful wolves in the continent. When the council retired to deliberate, Marcus pulled me into his arms in the side chamber where we waited. That was incredible, he said, voice thick with pride. The way you faced him down, the legal arguments about the original sale being invalid, Luna, you were magnificent. Is it enough? I asked. I think so, but I could hear the uncertainty he was trying to hide. The law is complicated, and some of those council members are old-fashioned about property rights. We waited for what felt like hours. When we were finally called back, my heart was beating so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. Chief Counselor Aldrich's expression was grave as he prepared to deliver the ruling that would determine the rest of my life. After careful consideration of all arguments presented, he began. This council finds that the original sale of the defendant was conducted in violation of territorial law regarding the trafficking of children. Relief started to bloom in my chest, but Aldrich wasn't finished. Furthermore, we find that continued bondage past the age of majority constituted illegal imprisonment. Therefore, Victor Bloodmane never held legal ownership of Luna Blackwood. The courtroom exploded in sound. Cheers from our supporters, angry shouts from Victor's allies. Through it all, Marcus pulled me into his arms, spinning me around as tears of joy streamed down both our faces. The mating bond between Luna Blackwood and Alpha King Marcus Blackwood is hereby recognized as legal and binding. Aldrich continued once order was restored. Conducted between two free consenting adults. It's over, Marcus whispered against my ear as the celebration continued around us. You're free. You're safe. You're mine. Forever, I whispered back. But even as we celebrated our victory, I caught sight of Victor across the room. The rage on his face was murderous, promising that while this legal battle was over, his desire for revenge was far from finished. We'd won this war, but I had the terrible feeling that Victor Bloodmane wasn't done with us yet. Still, in that moment, surrounded by the love of my mate and the validation of the highest court in the land, I felt something I'd never experienced before. The absolute certainty that I was exactly where I belonged. I was no longer the girl born to be a slave. I was Luna Blackwood, Queen of the Southern Territories, beloved mate of the Alpha King, and finally, completely, eternally free. Under the light of the full moon that night, Marcus and I stood on our balcony, overlooking the kingdom we would rule together. His arms were wrapped around me from behind, our bond humming with contentment and love. Any regrets? He asked softly. Only that it took us so long to get here. Every struggle was worth it to end up with you. I turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd saved me in every way that mattered. I love you, Marcus Blackwood. And I love you, Luna Blackwood. Today, tomorrow, and for all the tomorrows after that. Above us, the moon smiled down on the Alpha King and his queen, blessing our love with silver light. In the distance, wolves howled their joy and acceptance, welcoming their true queen home at last. The girl who'd been born to chains had become a woman crowned in starlight. And this was only the beginning of our story.